When the three found the spiral, each was transformed. For a while, the subtle variations unraveling across their interconnected lives remained unnoticed. Incremental changes cropped up amongst the usual day-to-day, a thinning section of hair, a loss of a few kilos in weight, and a dizziness that came into effect after dark. Similarities arose across them, the three, in ways that seemed to reverberate in tandem, only obvious to the sharp-eyed among us. Lara had been the first to touch the fossil. It was late on a Sunday afternoon and she had walked around the town center, one hand in her pocket twisting on a discarded receipt until it deteriorated, thumbing a text message with her free hand to her friend Dan. She had recently fallen out with their mutual acquaintance Ashad, a boy whose family owned half the properties on the island. Lara's family had their own enterprise, a construction company based on the outskirts, along the single-track road that led to the municipal airport. The business had been hit by a wave of recession that rippled across the channel from the mainland right up to their front door. Customers were falling behind on payments and Lara's father perennially blamed Ashad's family for increasing rents without any reason except that, in his words, the posh boy wanted more pocket money for golfing with his private school buddies. Lara's parents had been brought up on the island without much of anything except the ability to work for long hours, good honest traditional values, as her mother put it, and a deep aversion to the middle classes. Lara had tried to explain to her family that not everything was about money, causing her two older brothers to ridicule her for months. "Lil hippie," they shouted at her through their van window as she walked to the shops or to Dan's. "Look at the lil hippie, she's going to make a living from collecting rocks." They would snigger as they turned back up the volume on the radio, a sugary, repeating vocal of whatever song had topped the charts on the mainland's pop music radio channel drowning out her reply, which was always, "I'd rather be a hippie than a nobody." After completing school, Lara continued to study geology as a matter of principle. It was the only aspect of her education that she had found any interest in, albeit discerning this after only 2 or 3 lessons on the subject given by her aging geography teacher. The teacher had told the class that geology was Earth's way of telling us her story, and Lara had found this deeply comforting and strangely compelling, as if stones and sediments could tell her things humans simply could not despite their use of speech and language. She collected interesting rocks since she was a child, filling her pockets during every trip to the beach, which was many. The beach was like a valve for their family and anyone else living on the island who had tried to make a living there without inherited wealth. Kids not behaving? Take them to the beach. Run out of money to entertain them? Take them to the beach. Birthday party? Take them to the beach. It was a constant in Lara's life, yet her family seemed to completely ignore how mesmerizing and mystical the place was, and that it continued to exist despite their visits, forever shifting to the melody of the tides. Lara's inquisitive nature and penchant for organic forms meant that it was almost destined that she would be the first to touch the fossil. Explaining the ensuing events to her family had been particularly difficult as they lacked the intellectual subtlety that was required to acknowledge the nuances of what was happening. For her parents and brothers, learning was a tool to be used for a specific thing, for example reading instructions on how to operate a digger or lay the foundations for a building. Their knowledge-seeking was reductive in a way that Lara had long refuted, consciously or unconsciously, evidently on her own. She employed her keen eye to navigate the world as a portal or an opening rather than a set of instructions that needed to be completed on time and in a certain order. Nathan and Liam had slotted into the framework of their family's business with apparent seamless ease, destined to lackey under their father, always in a tool belt and work boots even on his day off. Whilst Lara had been offered a clerical position in the small, damp office that her mother had worked in when she had been raising the boys, Lara had taken one look at the peeling veneer and stack of papers covered in cement dust and had been struck by such a visceral response in her gut and bones that it took her all of 5 minutes to rebuff the offer of employment. much to her parents' disdain. "She's a dreamer," her dad would remark, patting her on the back sarcastically. When she was little, Lara had taken this as a compliment, until she grew older and realized that he was taking the piss, using her intellect as a stick to poke her with, becoming the cause of fault lines and fractures in their relationship. When Lara was born, her mother returned to being a full-time homemaker, and despite all the children now being grown up, had purposefully stayed in this role so that she could be the perfect granny, as she had explained to Lara. The future her family had propositioned her with hung limply before her. She chose her words carefully when communicating to her parents that this was not the plan she would be following, citing a desire to explore first before making any managerial decisions over the rest of her life. Lara wasn't particularly romantic, but she knew her destiny lay out with that environment, fixed by the people who maintained its uniform pulse. She wanted to live in abundance and expansively, this longing leading her to the fossil at the center of this story.